الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How are you guys doing? So I just want to introduce myself first of all, and the project that I'm working with Bayina, because it is very much related to the topic today. So my name is Safiya Ravat. I'm from Houston, Texas, not too far away. And I attended the Bayina Dream program about 5 years ago. And after learning the Arabic language, my husband and I continued our studies in Malaysia, and we just graduated in January with a degree in fiqh and usul al-fiqh from the International Islamic University of Malaysia. And then we immediately started working with Bayina. We are researchers and instructors. And so the work that we're doing with Bayina is actually we're creating a curriculum for high school and college-age students, for schools, for Sunday schools, for maybe even just youth halaqas, in which it's a tafsir of selected ayat, where they are actually reflecting upon the Quran. They're reflecting upon how can I implement these ayat in my life? How can I actually live the Quran? And so it was very suitable when the masjid called, asked me to do a talk on living the Quran, because alhamdulillah, that's what we've been preparing for the last couple of months. And so, but before we talk about that, let's tie it into something that's coming very soon, Ramadan next week. So I want to know, first of all, from some of you guys, what are your goals for Ramadan? If you can think of just one goal that you've set for Ramadan, or if you haven't set them, think about what you'd like to set for this coming Ramadan.
My goal is to not to backbite anybody in the whole month of Ramadan, you know. You try so much, but end of the day, it's slip of tongue and you say something bad about somebody. That's what my biggest goal is.
That's beautiful. So working on trying to...
gossiping and...
Yeah, trying not to gossip. It's some way you're trying to purify your heart from what you say. Any other goals? Okay. Yes?
I work time management.
Time management. Oh, yes. Ramadan, it feels so busy every single day. Like, where did the time go? Yet every moment you're also wondering about where's the food and when is the time going to come, but then the whole day's gone.
Yeah.
So, anybody else want to share? Okay.
Girls, they have to concentrate on their Quran. Inshallah. Their Quran, yeah.
Very good, very good. So the reason I ask is because the Quran and the month of Ramadan are tied together very closely, because it is the word that was sent down in the month of Ramadan, that Jibreel alayhi salam had the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite the entire Quran to him in Ramadan, and in his last Ramadan to recite it twice to him. And so often, for many people, their goal is to, from cover to cover, complete the entire Quran. And that is a very good task, alhamdulillah. There's so much reward. The Prophet ﷺ said there's so much reward from even every letter that you read in the Quran. There is 10 hasanat, 10 good deeds. And he said it's not that alif lam mim is 10 hasanat, but alif is 10 hasanat, lam is 10 hasanat, mim is 10 hasanat. So just imagine how much reward one could get from simply reciting the Quran from cover to cover. And I think that's also a goal that we also really try to implement in our children's lives. We say, first you're going to learn Alif Ba Ta, and then you're going to complete the Quran by the time you're 7 or 8 years old, at least recitation of the Quran from cover to cover. Which is a very good thing. However, I want to ask one question. I want to sort of make you guys think a little bit differently about the Quran. I want to know what you think is the primary purpose of the Quran. Anybody? To better our lives. Okay, absolutely. And how do we better our lives from the Quran?
Of course, not just reading Arabic if we don't know that. The reason I'm saying that because I am a mom and I did the same thing which we do, like which my parents did. Like in the beginning, I taught them Arabic. I feel like from the beginning it should not be just Arabic. It should be from the beginning something which would go in their hearts. Not like.
Absolutely. Any other ideas? What is the primary purpose of the Quran?
Lifestyle to become an honored lifestyle, so we end up living with them instead of just reading.
So it becomes a manual, a guidance through which we figure out how to better our lives, how to live. And so it's interesting, the reason I said I want to change your mindset, it's obvious that we know that. But sometimes in the daily grind of life, we forget the actual purpose behind the book which Allah revealed to us. And so in this month of the Quran, let's bring back its primary purpose. And I would say if our goal was to finish the Quran, that's great. But also make a tiny other goal where it is maybe just 1 page a day. It doesn't have to be a lot. Where we decide I'm going to read the translation of the Quran. I'm going to try to internalize what it says, see how I can implement this in my life, reflect on those ayats. We actually know the answer to this question, what is the primary purpose of the Quran? Allah is telling us every single day. We read Surah Fatiha, and at the end of Surah Al-Fatiha there is a dua. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. We end Surah Al-Fatiha with Ameen because it's a dua. So this dua we're asking Allah, guide us along the straight path. Guide us how to better our lives. Guide us on how to live our lives. Give us examples of الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, those who you blessed. And take us away from the sins of those who مَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ, anger was upon them. وَلَا الضَّالِينَ, those who went astray. So we are asking this dua every time, 17 times a day. And Allah beautifully, chronologically answers our dua in the very next ayah that's in the Quran. What is the next surah after Surah Al-Fatiha? The second surah of the Quran is Surah Al-Baqarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Alif Lam Mim. That is the book. I'm answering your question. Guide us along the straight path. That is the book. There is no doubt in it. It is a guidance for all who are conscious of God. So you ask every day for Allah to guide us along the path. Allah is saying, this is the book. Here it is. The answer to your prayer that you make every single day, 17 times a day, the Quran is the answer. It is the guidance. It's going to tell you the stories of الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, those who succeeded. It's going to tell you the stories of those who the anger was upon them and they went astray. But you can only reap the guidance of the Quran if we know what we're reading, if we reflect upon what Allah has put in the Quran. And so I'm not saying it's not a good idea to recite the Quran. There's so much hasanat in it. But what was the primary purpose that Allah sent the Quran down was a guidance. Allah says in His book, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته وليتذكر أولو الألباب. In Surah Sad, Allah says, this is a book which we have sent down to you full of blessings, that they may ponder and deeply reflect over its verses, and that men of understanding may remember it. Yadabbaru, it comes, the main word is tadabbur. Tadabbur of the Quran. That is one of the most primary purpose of the Quran. It is a guidance, and how do we seek it? How do we find its guidance? One, through scholars and teachers who are going to tell us the fiqh aspects of it, the aqidah aspects of it. And maybe those things we shouldn't reflect so deeply upon because we're not scholars. But for the entire rest of the Quran, so much of it is there. It's in plain, easily understood, simple language that we can reflect upon it and we can see how can I implement these ayat in my life. In another surah, Allah says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. Do they not think deeply about the Quran? Or are their hearts locked up from understanding? Allah said that if the Quran had been sent upon a mountain, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل, had we sent down this Quran upon a mountain, لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. You would have seen this mountain humbled and just split apart from the fear of Allah, from the weight that these ayat have in them. It would crumble this mountain. And yet, do we have hard enough hearts that it is similar to a mountain, that when we read the ayat of the Quran, we just buzz through them quickly? Yes, I finished the entire Quran in Ramadan, but did it have any effect in your heart? Did it affect anything? Did it better your life? Did it improve your life? Did it change the evils that you were doing? Did it show you the path of the successful? Did you actually reflect upon those ayat? Or were you just reading it because that's what our parents taught us, and that's what their parents taught us, and that's what their parents taught them? We have to change our mind about how the Quran actually affects us in our lives. And the Quran itself, I remember when I was young, we're always taught the miracles of all the prophets. And I was like, yeah, those are such cool miracles. Like Musa alayhi salam, his staff turned into a snake. That's so cool. And Isa alayhi salam was able to cure the blind and the people who were sick. And I used to be like, how is the Quran our miracle? That's so confusing. Like, it's a book. Because we separated it in our mind from childhood. Even, I grew up in South Africa, where we actually went to madrasa. We had like Islamic school every day, not just on Sunday. Yet Quran class was just alif ba ta. Quran class was just fatha dhamma kasra. Quran class was just how good was your tajweed. But then we separated it. The next class was now stories of the prophets. The next class was now seerah. And so I didn't have a connection to the miraculous book. I saw it as Islam has really cool stories, but the Quran is just something I recite, and I better not recite it incorrectly or I'm going to get in trouble. We disconnected the Quran, the miracle, from the actual miracles that we find in the stories and miracles that we find in the lessons. We need to reconnect those for ourselves, for our children, for people who come newly into Islam. It's important to know how the Quran was a miracle. And so at the time of the revelation of the Quran, it was amazing to see that some Sahaba who knew Arabic, it was their mother tongue, they sometimes took years to memorize a chunk of ayat. Why? They would say, I would just take 10 ayat at a time. I would read those ayat. I would reflect upon them. And I would not move on to memorizing another set of ayat until I implemented and lived those ayat in my life. These were the Sahaba, the most noble of people, the ones who sami'na wa ata'na. Yet some of them realized that if they were not going to implement these ayat, what was the benefit of, these were heavy ayat. If I'm just going to memorize, have I really gotten the core meaning of what Allah wants me to get? And so I just want to tell you a few stories of some of the Sahaba and how listening and reflecting on the Quran affected their lives. And actually some of these were not even Muslims. They had never converted, but we still see the way it affected them. And so the first story is of 3 men from the Quraysh. They were all noble men of the Quraysh. And they had, all of the noblemen of Quraysh who had not accepted Islam, they were warning everyone, don't listen to Muhammad. They were saying, don't listen to him. He's got some magic. If you listen to him, you'll be hypnotized. They were afraid because they knew the weight of these words, so they told people, don't go near. And so even Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was stopped from reading Quran in public, so he'd read it in the courtyard of his home, and still people would come around and listen because they were just so intrigued by what was said. It was so amazing what was being said. Yet those same words, when they're said to us, we see no meaning in them. We don't go, look, what does it mean? What is the translation of that? What is the implication of that? And so the story is that there are three noble men of the Quraysh who did not accept Islam. They were the same people telling everyone, don't go listen to Muhammad. And in the dark of the night when nobody was there, each of these men, one was Abu Jahl, one was Abu Sufyan, and one was Al-Akhnas. And they came slowly to the home of the Prophet ﷺ. All miraculously, subhanAllah, Allah allowed it that they were all on different sides of the home, so neither of them knew that the other was there. And they just stood listening into the home of the Prophet ﷺ as he recited the Quran at night. And it said that they were so mesmerized by what was being said, even though they told nobody, everyone, don't listen to us, you're gonna get hypnotized. They would listen, and it was like something came over them. They couldn't leave until the dawn would come, and they realized, oh no, it's too light now. People are going to see my face listening at the home of the Prophet ﷺ and let me run away. And so when the first time they did that, they all ran away. They all bumped into each other. What are you doing here? No, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And so they asked one another, what did you think of what was said? Abu Sufyan, Al-Akhnas asked this to Abu Sufyan. He said, in it were some implications that I really understood. Some of the things I didn't understand. So he was just giving a very vague, he didn't say I liked it, or he just said there's certain things that, yeah, I really understood what it was saying there. Some things I didn't really understand. Maybe it was talking about al-ghayb, maybe it's talking about some concept that they didn't have in their deen. And so, but then Abu Jahl was asked, what do you think of what you heard? And you can see the ignorance in his heart even from that moment. He never converted to Islam. Al-Akhnas and Abu Sufyan eventually converted later on. Abu Jahl, you can see his arrogance from that moment. He didn't really even respond to what was said. He said, the tribe of Muhammad and our tribe have been competing all along, all these years. When we fed people, they'd feed people. When we took care of the poor, they'd take care of the poor. And now they say they have a prophet amongst them, and ayat and verses are revealed to him. No, I'll never accept anything that is said. So even though he stayed there for hours listening, mesmerized, there was so much arrogance in his heart that he didn't accept anything from that moment. The funny thing about this story is this happens 2 more times. The next night, they after that first meeting, they were like, okay, we're never coming back again. If people find out, imagine what they'll say about us. Yet the next night, each of them came back to the home and listened. Again, they met each other, said, what are you guys doing here? What are you doing here? Okay, we're never coming back here again. And finally, a third night, all of them came back. They couldn't resist coming back to the amazing weight of these ayat. Eventually, after the third time, they stopped coming. How much power did those words have for people who staunchly disbelieved in it, who could not resist coming back to those words because they understood what was being said, the implications of what were being said, even certain things they didn't understand, yet they couldn't back away from it. It was so mesmerizing to them. There was another man. He was from an area, he wasn't from the Quraysh, he was from Ad-Daws, Tufail Ad-Dawsi. And so he was a leader of his people, okay? He comes to Makkah, the people, the Quraysh, welcome him, but they say again, be careful, Ya Tufail. There is a man here, Muhammad, just don't listen to him because you're going to get hypnotized by what he says. So Tufail Ad-Dawsi is like, okay, I'll try to stay away from this man. And so he decides to go to the Kaaba one day, and he sees Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and at that point he takes 2 cotton swabs and puts it in his ears, and he says, no, I'm not going to listen. The people warn me, I'm not going to listen. A little bit of what was being recited leaks into his ears, and Tufail Ad-Dawsi thinks to himself, you are a leader of your people. Like, you're a smart person. You are able to figure out truth from falsehood, right? You're a smart enough man. don't let people tell you how to judge. You judge for yourself. And so he took out his earbuds and he listened. And he even went to the Prophet ﷺ's home and he listened. And he was so mesmerized by what was being said, the truth in the ayat, the implications of what was being said, he accepted Islam. And he went back to his people and he asked them to accept Islam. Yet the people were very hard-hearted at that time, the people in his area, that only his mother, only his wife, his father, and another man from Ad-Daws accepted Islam, and that was Abu Huraira radiallahu anh, one of the best students of the Prophet ﷺ, who has one of the most narrations. And so he comes back to the Prophet ﷺ and says, my people are too, engrossed in sin, make dua that something bad happens to them. The Prophet ﷺ puts his hands up. Abu Huraira sitting there worried, like, my family, oh no. The Prophet ﷺ says, Ya Allah, guide Ad-Daws, guide Ad-Daws. Sufyan Ad-Dawsi goes back, and eventually, many years later, he comes back. The hijrah has already happened. They come back to Medina, and he says, there were 70 families from my tribe that accepted Islam. So many people accepted Islam from the weight of those heavy words. The Quran is something that contains answers for every single one of life's problems. Like we think it's just, these words that say this, this is who Allah is. We feel like they are either too high for us to understand, or maybe even the translations are a bit difficult to understand. But that just means find a different translation that you can actually understand. The Quran is full of so many gems and answers to life's problems. Allah says it's kitabun mubarakun. Mubarak means something that has blessings, but it means it continuously keeps on giving blessings. So if you were to look at the Quran a year ago and read one ayah, and you were to reflect upon it, it may answer a question that you're having in that day. Yet if you came back to that same ayah a year later, it is mubarak, it keeps giving. You'll find some other wisdom in that ayah, that same ayah, and how it can affect your life today. The kitab is mubarak, it keeps on giving, it keeps on helping. And just a few things that we can see the Quran has, like we think it doesn't really have much guidance for us. We're not sure what guidance we can extrapolate from it. The Quran gives us stories of men who were upright. It teaches us about social justice, those who stood up to evil tyrants. It teaches us to stand up to oppression. It teaches us about people who were racist against an entire other tribe. Pharaoh, racist against the Israelites, told us to step up against that oppression, social justice. It even gives us even more personal stories of so many different family members and how they interacted with one another. If you have an issue with your father, you have the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam, how he dealt with his father in such a respectful way, even though he disbelieved in the message. If you have issues with your children, we have the story of Luqman and how he would try to teach his son the beautiful advice a father gives to a child. Even if you have a child who disbelieves, you have the advice in Nuh alayhi salam's story, how he tried to help his child who didn't believe. If you want stories of how people got married or how one can get married, we have the story of Musa alayhi salam and the marriage to his wife, right? And how that happened exactly. Or how men and women should interact, how men should be helping women who are in a situation where they feel like they cannot be helped. The women, the two sisters are trying to get the water and there's no space for them, and he comes and says, I will help you. That's the job of the men. We understand how gender interaction is supposed to be. We learn even about siblings, Yusuf alayhi salam having siblings who are wanting to cause the death of him. So if we have siblings who are really hurting us in our lives, being a fitna in our lives, we have the example of Yusuf alayhi salam. And what he did in the end, and turned around and said, I forgive all of you for everything that you have done. We have the story, even stories of so many stories of people who are doing business, people who have a large garden, one who's grateful for his garden, one who's not. It tells us, it's not just families, it's not just oppression and social justice, then it's even the day-to-day life. How do you deal with the people in your business? How do you be grateful to Allah even in this wealth that you have? So it gives us, it's got every single question you could ever have. There is some guidance in the Quran for you, but only if we are able to go to the Quran and reflect upon it. And so the question then is, how do we do that? The number one answer would be, although I know it's not possible for everyone, would be to learn Arabic, inshallah. And that is a way that you can be reciting and at the same time understanding. But if that is not a goal that can be attained short term, then at least be reading the translation of the Quran, the tafsir of the Quran, and reflecting upon what those words mean in your life, how they can be applied in your life. And so what I would suggest is making a small goal this Ramadan. So the best way to start a habit is to do something for at least 20 or so days. That's what science has told us. That's amazing. Ramadan is about 30 days. So we have 30 days to create a new habit. So yes, let's all read the Quran. Let's do it cover to cover. If that is the goal that you've always been doing, alhamdulillah. And then start with 1 page a day or half a page a day where you're actually going through the Quran and the translation of it, understanding of it. Allow those words, the weight of those words to fall upon your heart and make your heart humble like a mountain would be humbled by those words. And see, how can I apply this in my life? Maybe take the example of the Sahaba who would just take 10 ayahs for a whole period of time until they implemented them. But make your own certain goal. And so here's just some numbers that if you were to do a certain amount, this is how long it would take you to finish the Quran in reading the translation. If you were to just do 1 page a day, in 1 year and 8 months, just about a year and a half, you will have read the entire Quran. You will have read all of the stories in them with understanding, because you're reading the translation or you're reading a tafsir. You would have reflected upon these ayat, and hopefully you're making a little journal of how I can implement these in your life, and you have this entire journal of reflections, of notes of how I can implement the Quran in my life. Now it's not just something I read and don't understand. Now I have this entire notebook of how I can implement the Quran in my life. So 1 page a day will take you a year and 8 months. If we increase that to 2 pages, in 10 months, less than a year, you'll have gone through the entire Quran, understanding it. There's a lot in the Quran. It's 600 or so pages. But how many other books have we read that are thousands of pages? Like if you ever read the Harry Potter series, it's like thousands and thousands of pages, and we remember to the T what happened to X and X character in this story. If we actually just read the Quran in the language that we understand and reflected upon it, it's only 600 pages at the end, 600 or so pages at the end of the day. And so the task I would put upon you is figure out what is your small goal of understanding the Quran. How few pages, how few ayat, that's okay. You know, small and consistent deeds are most beloved by Allah. So I would say first you read the Arabic, then read the translation of those ayat, and then sit and reflect on how those ayat can be implemented in your life. What is Allah trying to teach me from these ayat? What am I supposed to be gaining from these ayat? How can I apply it in my work situation, in my family situation, in my heart? How can I change my heart to reflect these ayat? And so I want to do a little bit of since I said we are working on this curriculum at Bayyina. I don't want to just give you this idea, reflect upon the Quran and let's leave. I want to give you a little bit of a taste of how you could do it. So I decided to take one of the most, besides Surah Al-Fatiha, one of the most oft-read surahs in the Quran. And the reason I would say it's the most oft-read in our prayers is because it's very short. It's tiny. So it's easy. We just say, okay, I'm going to read my salah. I have to get back to something, so I'm going to read Surah Al-Asr. 3 ayat, easy to do. But what does Surah Al-Asr actually mean? What is it trying to tell us for our life? So we're actually going to sit and deeply reflect upon Surah Al-Asr. So we'll begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. How many times have we heard that? I mean, you can imagine it's been read thousands, if not, hundreds of thousands of times in our own daily prayers, right? But what does it actually mean? Let's go ayah by ayah. Wal asr. The waw in this is actually a qasam, or a swearing. Allah is swearing by asr, time. So I'm actually going to need your participation here. What is the weight of Allah swearing by time? What is the implication of Allah swearing by time? Or the concept of swearing by something? I swear on blah, I swear on this, that this is true, that this happened. What is the implication of swearing?
That means it's very important.
Very important. Exactly.
It's showing us the importance of time.
Telling us the importance of
Time.
time. So that's one of the main reflections one can get. If someone's swearing by, if Allah is swearing by something, He's trying to get our attention and say, look at this is a very important thing, I'm actually swearing by it. It's not just a frivolous thing that you throw away or waste. This is something very important. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Certainly, there is emphasis here, certainly man is, even more emphasis, certainly in loss. Fi khusr. La fi khusr. So by time, I swear by time, Allah says, certainly man is completely drowning in loss. What are the implications of that? Think just about time. What time is? What is being lost? There's a beautiful little anecdote of Imam al-Razi says that he heard from another scholar this little story of how he understood Surah Al-Asr, and he said, I never really understood Surah Al-Asr until I saw a man in the marketplace who was selling ice. He was an ice seller. And nowadays, the ice sellers put their ice in a big freezer and it doesn't melt. But back then, what did they have? They had this huge, big cube of ice, and they would chip away at it and give it to people. And what was happening every single second to that ice? If someone wasn't buying it, it's slowly melting away. And so that the man who is selling the ice seller says, oh people, have mercy on me. You're buying a lot of other things, but come to me. My capital is running away, it's melting away every second. And that scholar said, when I finally saw that, I was able to understand the meaning of Surah Al-Asr. Every single moment of our day, because a moment is time. It's going away and it's not coming back. So what are your reflections on this ayah? By time, Allah swearing by time, man is certainly in loss.
We're not utilizing those moments the way we should be. I mean, most of us, even if we are thinking we're so good, but it's so easy to waste time, as we do. And if that's our capital, then we are just throwing it away. And you're not investing to get return if we are wasting time.
So even like thinking of it like business capital. Actually, it's
our Imam, what's the Imam Ravat here? He did a khutbah the other day, and he summarizes it in this way. I wasn't thinking earlier that it's really.
it's like a capital. And so see the beauty of reflecting on it. You can make parallels with other things in your life. First, when you read Surah Al-Asr, you can't see how it can be affected or related to something in your life. But if you're a businessman or you're anyone who's ever dealt in business, all of a sudden, time is like capital. Capital is wasting away unless you invest it. Investing it gives you something greater in the long run. But doing nothing with it, it dwindles away. That's why the Prophet ﷺ would encourage people to who are taking care of the money of the yatim, of the orphan, invest it. Because slowly and slowly it's just going to dwindle away, and that orphan's not going to have anything at the end of the day. People who have lots of money, the Prophet tells them to money and savings, invest that, because slowly it goes away. Zakat takes a little bit out of it all the time. This and that takes a little bit out of it all the time. Invest your capital. So time is the exact same thing. How can you invest time? How can one invest time? How does one utilize time so it has a greater return later? How is that possible? Can you invest time?
Yeah, because when you do things with the God consciousness, that's like investing. Because if I'm helping, like you are here to give your time, you are investing. Right? So there are other things like which we do. So many here people are doing, feeding, looking out to see what people need and fulfill, try to fulfill the need or share your whatever I have, if I'm able to share to the rest.
Or even type Sadaqa Jariyah, even when your time is ended, it continues to grow.
Absolutely.
Sadaqa Jariyah. You had
I was just
a...
thinking about intention also. If you have multiple intentions, whatever you do, you can get just so many rewards by doing one thing.
SubhanAllah. Look at all these three things, three even separate points,
Yeah.
but so interesting how just thinking about time can make us realize how much opportunity there is. Even though Allah is telling us we're in loss, but just thinking about time, it tells us that everything we're doing that's good is an investment for the hereafter. Every person we feed, every person we teach something, it's an investment for the hereafter. Sadaqa Jariyah, you give your time now, you give something now, and Allah is saying it's continuously working, it's continuously going. So there is a way where time doesn't always have to be running out, right? And then the last one, if your intention, in one moment, you can make the intention for 3 different things. Even if you don't fulfill all 3, you fulfill one thing. Allah is saying you get reward for those which you intended. You get a good deed for those which you intended. So utilizing your little time to make huge, huge mountains of amazing things in the akhirah. But Allah is saying, in general, we are all in loss. We are all in loss. Except for إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And so you guys are already answering the excepts by what you said, how you can invest your time. Allah is saying, yes, everyone is in loss except those who believe. They do good deeds, continuously making niyyah for good deeds, sadaqa jariyah. وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Advising people to the truth and advising people to be patient. And so, even though this surah seems like it's something that's so scary, like, yes, we are all in loss. But just by thinking about it for a few moments, we see how much we could do with the little time that we have. How we can multiply our rewards multiple fold by just thinking about time. Okay, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Let's reflect upon that for a while. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا means except those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and those who do good deeds. So a reflection we could have upon that, or a question we could have, and this is how the curriculum is set up, is that we probe questions and we discuss. So why is amanu before عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ? Why is belief before actions? So Allah is saying the success, everyone is losing, except for these people who are doing these successful actions. The first is believing and then doing the deed. So why is good, these are ways you can do tadabbur of the Quran. One is read the Arabic, read the English, and just think how can this, even one word, what can I think about it? Time. And then the second thing you could do is, why is this in this order? Everything Allah has said has no random sequence. Everything has a reason. So why is this in this order? So you had a reflection?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because you have to believe in Allah first. That's the only thing that Allah won't forgive. That if you
For the
do
deeds to
bad
be-
deeds, He will always forgive us. If you don't believe in Him, that has to come first, and then do good deeds.
For the deeds to be accepted, there should be belief in the heart first.
And it reminds me of Surah Al-Baqarah, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. That comes first, يُؤْمِنُونَ, and then they make salah.
beautiful, paralleling it even to other ayat in the Quran. And so it is common that we see in the Quran, it's always talking about aman, yu'minuna, thumma, then the action. So yes, the prerequisite to getting a akhirah reward for the good deeds is belief. You can still do good deeds without belief, but Allah says He rewards those people. Allah is still just. He rewards those people who do good without belief with reward in this life. With reward in this life, because they still deserve good for good, right? The reward of good is good.
Assalamu alaikum, sisters. I'm Tabassum. I'm the one who's running for city council. I wanted to say a few things about this. First and foremost, I think, like the Quran says, that you have to believe in Allah before anything else can be accepted in Allah's eyes for any work that you do. But I think, obviously, Allah is not forcing any human being to accept Him as Allah. Because I feel that the belief for the Creator has to come automatically from inside you. Nobody can force you to believe, right? All human beings have been given by Allah the free will. So some human beings, automatically they grow up with that faith that there is somebody who created me, His name is Allah. Whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or whatever faith that you, but there are people who don't, even if they have grown up in a Muslim family or a Christian family, but they tend to, as they grow up, not have that belief anymore that there is a Creator. But there is no compulsion. But those people can also turn out to be good and also do good deeds, correct? Right? But Allah will reward them differently, correct? So what is the reward? Like, let's say for somebody like Bill Gates, who has done tremendous work for humankind. It's just he's helping people all over the world. Poor, immunization, education, women, children, all over the world. How does he get rewarded? He was not a Muslim, remember that. So what is his reward? My question.
Allah knows his reward. I don't know his reward.
Yes.
But all I can explain, I can attempt to explain that from the hadith of the Prophet, which is that those who believe and do good deeds, their reward is in the akhirah and the dunya, but specifically in the akhirah as well. And those who do good deeds, yet they do not believe, Allah rewards them in this life. So they are rewarded with good. They are rewarded with, rizq from Allah.
Okay.
I mean, you think of the concept that besides, a person who's giving so much to humanity, even the worst sinner on the face of this earth, Muslim or not, Allah still gives them rizq. The next day they have food. That is all blessings of Allah. All of this is from Ar-Rahman. One of the explanations of Ar-Rahman is that it's a wide encompassing sort of rahmah or mercy that covers all of mankind.
Sure.
And so even like, a man who is begging on the street who may not be Muslim, Ar-Rahman still takes care of him through us. We give to him. Ar-Rahman is still taking care of him, giving him sustenance every day. And so those who do good in this life without belief, Allah says, I still reward them in this life. Because the reward for good is good. So that's a very heavy aqidah question,
Yeah.
which has, you can give different scenarios. But I'll just say humbly, my expertise is not in aqidah, so
Right.
I wouldn't be the best to answer specifically.
Right, because most of the time, me and my other friends who are sisters, Muslim sisters like me, we always have that argument that a Muslim who believes, a person who grew up in a Muslim family doesn't have a faith. A person who grew up as a Christian has faith, and somebody who doesn't have faith but is done good. If all of these people are doing good, one believes in Allah, one believes in, Christianity, one believes in, their thing, somebody who doesn't even believe, but they're all doing the same type of deeds. How are they rewarded in this world and in a different world? How are they regarded as human beings in Allah's eyes? Because they're all human beings. One is a Muslim, the other one isn't, but they're doing both the same type of deeds. The other one is a non-Muslim, doesn't believe in anybody. any being, but he's also doing good. So how are they rewarded and regarded in Allah's eyes? That's, I think, is a very important question for, I think, any human being. And it will also help people who are non-believers to become believers based on the, the understanding of what entails. It's a big, deep thought question. Yes.
I always feel like somebody who didn't even get our message, like if like your message, I should say,
Right.
you are saying right now, right? Maybe another person, maybe your friend who's not Muslim didn't come here, right?
Right.
They didn't, but they're good. So we don't. I think like nowhere we have that responsibility or task to think what is their reward, because it's between their heart and Allah.
Allah.
At the end of the day, it's Allah, whether they use that word or not, whether they're Christian or not, right? Even when they say, Father, do this, do that, they same God, right?
Right.
God is
But some people who don't even believe in God,
Yeah.
but he's doing a lot for humanity.
So the bottom line, in my opinion, is that anybody's reward is with Allah, and even if we put our 24 hours here talking about it, it's not going to go anywhere, because
We don't know.
we have no,
We don't have enough
yeah,
understanding.
we don't even know whether we are getting.
Not even that, but if you think about the
Right.
fact that Allah's name is Al-Adl, He's the
Yeah,
most
He's
just.
just.
Of course.
Everything that gives
That's what I
me peace
feel.
with this answer is that Allah is the most just, so He's going to just with everything.
Yeah.
That's what I
So I
feel.
don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it for a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
My time has to be with making sure that my condition at the end
Sure.
of the day with Allah is
Sure.
pure,
Sure.
and in the end, Allah.
Yeah, I had a big argument with a friend of mine. She said, no, anybody who's not a Muslim, no matter how good things you do, it's not going to count. I said, that just cannot make sense. Allah is the most just. If you do good, doesn't matter whether you're Muslim or a non-Muslim, you will be judged justly by Allah. He's most just. So then it's a big argument, about. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstanding in Islam itself among Muslims about, how good deeds are rewarded and all of that stuff.
These are beautiful questions that come from what? Just إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. I'm going to end this, we'll go to the next, we'll finish with the next ayah. But I just want to end this thought with exactly as the sister mentioned here, that it is not upon us. We don't have the, what is it called, the gavel. We're not holding the gavel. We're not making judgment at the end of the day. We know that Allah says He loves humanity. He loves all people, and He would not wish to throw the people into the fire. So that's not what Allah wishes for. And it is even said, there's a hadith that every single person, a home is made for them in Jannah. So Allah's wish is that everyone makes it into Jannah. But then it is what they do in this life that then decides whether that home is not theirs anymore and given to another person. And to conclude this thought, Allah is the most just, and there is one belief in Aqidah, there are different opinions on this matter, but one belief is that if someone in this life was never shown Islam, like they had never been given the message thoroughly, like in a correct manner, not like over the news in an incorrect manner, that is not being shown Islam. But if someone was shown Islam correctly, if someone was not shown Islam in their life, so they lived their life, maybe they heard about Islam, but they were never shown it, they were never shown the true guidance.
They will not be judged.
Then on the day of judgment, they are given their own separate, test. Allah gives them their own separate test. He doesn't base this life's, belief and actions on that person because they were ghafla, like they were not able to hear the message or understand it.
Which means a Muslim who has been brought up in a Muslim family would be judged differently than somebody who never received the message.
There is weight on a person for knowing, right? It's the same in life. Like if you came to understand that this something is untrue, it is your job now to not just ignore that. You know I need to properly give justice to this thing which I have found out that is truth, or this untruth I have to give justice by spreading to people the untruth. I'm just saying in anything. Inshallah we can discuss later, and again I'm not the best person. I think the imam of this masjid would be much better person to talk about. And so the last ayah is إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So it's interesting to know, if you look at the translations, it will be talking about, this is saying, those who advise mutually to the truth, and those who advise mutually to patience. And so what can we gain from the concept of mutually? Just that one word in the understanding of the words. What can we gain from, we are advising each other mutually. We are advising each other mutually to truth and patience. What does that tell us as an ummah or as humanity, what we should be doing?
We should worry about our household, our community, not for ourselves. If they all come together, it's going to be easier for us to.
So it shows a communal obligation. So the first one was إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. That's about you. Your belief, you got to make sure you have it on check. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, you should be doing good deeds. And then finally, Allah is saying that the next two things is that you can't just only worry about yourself. A lot of times you say, it's me, I just worry about myself, I don't care about other people. Allah is saying, no, it is also a communal obligation for people to be calling people to what they find is true, advising each other to patience, meaning if someone is having a difficult time dealing with this sin, helping them patiently get over it, or dealing with a loss, helping them patiently get over it. There is this idea that we need to be helping one another constantly. We don't just see the person on the side of the road with a tire that's blown out and say, it's his problem. Allah will send him help some other way. It's our problem. Each and every, not every single, we can't deal with every single person in the world's problem, but where you can help, like in your family, in your masjid, in your community, or even like in the greater community, some cause is going on, and you don't say, well, that doesn't affect me, this race that's being discriminated against, I'm not a part of that race, therefore it doesn't affect me. Allah is saying, no, you're in a community together, you work with each other and help each other with others' sins, others' losses, others' discriminations, others' issues. And so even that concept is communal. We can reflect upon it so much to see how can we implement it in our lives. I'll end this discussion with Surah Al-Asr, and the reason being actually because it is said that Surah Al-Asr is like almost a comprehensive understanding of the entire Quran, because look, it tells you first of all the issue, we're running out of time, but here's the ways to solve that, also known as here's the steps, the 4-step process to be a successful person in life. And so it is said that the Sahaba would never meet and part without at least reciting Surah Al-Asr once. And so we will conclude this with the recitation of Surah Al-Asr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. I pray that this Ramadan we're able to find the Quran and see the Quran in a way that we've not perhaps seen it before, that it is a guidance for us, it is a book for us to reflect and implement in our own lives, and that just like the Sahaba, even if we take a few ayat at a time, inshallah, we are doing justice to his book because we're finally trying to implement its purpose in our lives. We ask Allah to give us barakah in this Ramadan and make it full of forgiveness for us and good deeds for us. May Allah forgive our family, our friends, our parents. May Allah give barakah to this masjid and this gathering and make us amongst those who are in Al-Firdaus. Ameen. And if there's any questions, inshallah, entertain them.
So this curriculum, which you said that you're putting together, what shape it's